Week number 2 is upon us. The Ohio State Buckeyes are well into the work week, and they welcome in the Western Michigan Broncos to the Horseshoe on Saturday afternoon. We get you ready for a Week 2 matchup between Ohio State and Western Michigan here on the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness, is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, welcome in, everybody, to the Buckeye Breakdown Podcast. We're so excited to be back with you here on a Thursday night. Anthony Moeglin here from my partner, Kevin Woidke. First, before we get into anything, apologies for me to you, Kevin. I've been pronouncing your name wrong for our first 4 shows together, so I got to get out in front of that and just the deepest apologies on my end.
All good. Happened to me through every year of my life, so it's no big deal.
Look at these two last names. We are 2 guys who have never had their names pronounced properly ever before. But excited to be back with you guys, and thanks for again for jumping in with us. We love the community that we have here on the on our Ohio State on SI and in this Buckeye Breakdown podcast, and we're really excited to get everyone set for the Western Michigan Broncos. Not the biggest marquee matchup. It is in prime time, Kevin, but I would say the eyes of the nation won't be on this one. But still important for Ohio State to come in and get a win. So as we kick this off, Kevin, why don't you start us up and kind of talk about maybe what it's like to do a 7:30 kickoff, right? It's a later in the day kick. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen throughout the day. You got other college football on. What are the guys doing throughout the day on Saturday to kind of get their mind right, but also maybe get off their feet, but balance that with not being a slug kind of all day long?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, usually wake up time's usually pretty laxed. Then you got breakfast, you jump into walk through, maybe some film, then go back up. 7:30 kick, you're probably looking at 3 hours of a break where you can go take a nap, do whatever you need to do, watch some football, and then jump back down for dinner, and then head back up and get dressed and ready to go.
And then you snap right into game time. And in a game like this, and a day like this, you'd rather, you know, in my preference, have this game at noon and just kind of like get it over with, right? Not to be disrespectful or anything, but just you have this hanging over your head all day. You got guys, you know, who just want to get out and go, especially, you know, being that this is week 2. And we talked all week about, you know, the difference that a team will show from weeks 1 to week 2, the improvements that they can make. And we saw it, and Coach Day talked about it a couple times this week of like, hey, yeah, it looked good. We took care of business. We won by 40 whatever points and kind of blew Akron out at the end, but it wasn't perfect. And there's certainly a lot of things that the Buckeyes are going to have to correct here. And I'm really excited to see what this week 2 version of this Buckeyes team looks like, because ton of stuff to correct on. I have some thoughts in mind, but Kevin, we'll start with you. What are a couple things that you're looking forward to seeing, whether it be offense, whether it be defense, but that the Buckeyes made an improvement from weeks 1 to week 2?
Absolutely. I mean, on the defense side of the ball, I'd say not really an improvement, but just making sure that it sustains. Like, don't get last, don't get sloppy. You know, like, still a game, still means a lot. Got to go out there and keep using your fundamentals. From an offense side of the ball, I'd love to see the offensive line play with a little more cohesion. You know, Western Michigan watched our film just as much as we did, so they're going to know that if they throw some confusing fronts at us, it might work. So I'm hoping that throughout the week they were able to focus on that and, you know, play a little bit better with some more cohesion and recognize defenses a little bit easier. Yeah,
it's a really good point you make about the defensive side of the football and making sure that they kind of hold themselves to that really high standard. It was really interesting. I was able to record and ask Denzel Burke a few questions after the week 1 game against Akron, and he was like visibly disappointed. And someone had asked him, and they were like, "Hey, dude, you know, you guys just blew them out, but there's some disappointment there." He's like, "What's that kind of about?" And he goes, "Yeah. we expected to dominate them. They should have got no points, right? We gave up 6 points. They should have had 0. And it was like, oh yeah, like these guys have their minds, at least on the defensive side, not saying that they don't on offense, but
Right.
Denzel Burke, I've been very vocal on our show here. He's become like one of my favorite guys on this team because he's become that leader of the defense. And he was like visibly upset and visibly angry and frustrated. And he's like, yeah, we have to be better. We have to dominate. And you love that mindset of like, yeah, we gave up 6 points, but it wasn't good enough.
I mean, yeah, you need that dog. You do. Every team needs it. 7-10 guys that are like that on the team really, I mean, it makes a huge difference. Guys that go out there and they, job's not done type mentality and going out there and just dominating. And then, they could be nice guys when they're eating lunch and dinner and at class. But, I mean, when they're between that white rectangle, they better take the chain off and just go.
Yeah, you love it. And in Ohio State, that defense is filled with a lot of those guys. So I'm really curious to see how they play. Obviously, they were great last week, but still some room to improve. And on the offensive side of the ball, man, I think for me, the one thing I'm really, really excited to see is how this offense kind of matures. Matures isn't the right word because it is a veteran group, but some of the guys are new to Ohio State, right? Will Howard, new to Ohio State. Quinshon Judkins, new to Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith, obviously a true freshman, new to Ohio State. How are those guys going to respond after, hey, it was a clunky start. It really was. People weren't quite happy with us, Kevin, that we were saying that on Saturday, or excuse me, on Sunday, but it wasn't a smooth start. It was just a really up and down first half, not even the first couple drives. The whole first half wasn't really smooth. I want to see this offense come out of the locker room, hopefully take the opening kickoff and just let's go from snap number 1. Don't wait any longer. The lights aren't too bright. You've been in the horseshoe before. This isn't new. You've worn now the scarlet and gray. This will be the second time for these guys. Let's get going. Let's get started early and often, and don't take your foot off the gas.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the way to do it. That's the way they've heard everyone talk about it all week, and they're just as eager to get out there and show what they can do immediately. And the quicker they can get off the field, the better. And that's going to be their mentality.
No doubt. Finish all those drives. The goal on offense for everybody is finish drives with a kick, right? Whether it be an extra point, a field goal, or a punt. Finish every drive with a kick. That's always the goal. But on Saturday, it's going to be finished with an extra point or finish with a field goal for sure. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball. We have a team coming into town that is a MAC opponent, right? And you think on paper, hey, Ohio State should roll. That might not necessarily be the case. Western Michigan, don't know if everybody, I'm assuming if you're watching this channel, you kind of have your eyes and ears locked to the Big Ten. But Western Michigan gave Wisconsin everything they wanted and a little bit more. They ended up losing to Wisconsin in week 1 in Madison, 28-14. But truthfully, it took some luck for the Badgers to get back into a game that they really couldn't get going. They had a really legitimate chance to lose that football game. And Western Michigan ended up kind of letting it slip away. But this team is nothing to slouch at.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they got run on a little bit, but that's what's going to happen when you're going up against just bigger guys like Wisconsin has. I mean, the cheese curds up there give you a little extra poundage. And then, but the compliment to them is they held Tyler Van Dyke, who's not like a bad quarterback. And it's not like other quarterbacks we've seen in the past that enter the transfer portal because, they flamed out somewhere. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. He was a 4-star transfer portal projected by 247. Like, and Wisconsin has high hopes for him, and he kept them in check. And that's just a compliment to their defense as a whole.
Absolutely. And one of the things, and this is kind of a sidebar here, something that just popped into my mind because I was listening to a show today. It was actually the Scott Van Pelt show. It was him and Stanford Steve, Steve's on the Stanford Steve's on ESPN Game Day. He's the picks guy. And they were talking about, this new world of college football. And it's not new anymore, but we're so used to the one and done world in college basketball where these teams are always flipping their roster over, and they're only having to get 5 new guys on the same page. And they were talking, it was in terms of Ohio State, or I forget, maybe the team was talking about, it was actually LSU and USC. And there was a ton of transfers on the field. And they were talking about how hard it is to get 11 guys or maybe even 20 guys on the same page with a handful of key transfers. If your point guard transfers, your point guard's new in basketball, he's just got to mesh with 4 guys. If If your quarterback's new in football, he's got to mesh with 11, right? And he's got to learn a new offense, and he's got to learn new terminology. And yeah, they've been with the teams for like over a year now, and learning the playbooks and stuff. But game action's different, man, and you start getting those live bullets. It was interesting. I'm curious your perspective on that, because it was I never thought of it like that. And you're like, yeah, it is going to be hard. They don't just show up. It isn't NCAA 25 where you get a new roster and bang, you're rolling. These are real dudes who have to like learn how to build that chemistry with one another.
Absolutely, and that it takes time. But I mean, you saw Justin Fields do it. You saw, I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. He transferred in and did it well. And I mean, it's kind of give and take, but not everybody's like that. I mean, you saw Jalen Hurts transferring to Oklahoma. You see people transfer all over the place. I think that it takes a little bit of time to mesh, but if you can go out there as quickly as you can get there and show them you're willing to get down there with them, earn their trust as quickly as possible, that really speeds up the process.
Absolutely. And yeah, so for this game in particular, right, obviously Western Michigan's going to come in 0-1, but they have not only some experience playing against a Big Ten team, which they did last week, but they have some guys kind of on their offense. And again, like I said, we're going to continue to say it, in this transfer portal world, they have some Power 5 guys, some guys that have played some big-time football now on their roster. So definitely nothing to slouch at. So I want to start, Kevin, when the Buckeyes are on defense, right? We talked about holding to that standard, finding a way to come out and shut this offense down. It's not an offense that's going to really blow the doors off of you. They kind of were a balanced attack last week, scored obviously 14 points, but on the ground had 120 yards rushing, 141 yards through the air, and were not necessarily efficient on either side. Average about 3 yards a carry on the ground, about 7 yards a play through the air. So kind of struggled to get going, but it was more of a kind of control the clock type of game plan for them. What are you looking for? A couple guys to look out for when the Broncos have the ball on offense.
Absolutely. Sticking kind of my area of expertise a little bit with blocking, pass protecting kind of thing. Speaking of transfer, they have a good one. Devon Mortimer. He came in from University of Louisiana Monroe, I think, ULM. I'm sorry. And I mean, he didn't have a whole lot of stats last. He didn't have a whole lot of catches, have a whole lot of yards. That was more Malik Duavadan, or Duadan. I think I threw a V in there by accident. And Malik was the receptions leader, but I think Devon and Malik are going to be a duo that are going to be a little bit hard to combat, especially when they start playing MAC teams. I mean, those are two guys, and then you got Blake Bosma in the middle as a tight end. He got, I think, the second most receiving yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns last year, so they utilize him enough. And I think they're going to keep with a quarterback that is still learning, and he's still looking to gain some confidence. That easy throw is going to be that tight end, so I think it's going to be on our linebackers to lock him up.
Absolutely. And that quarterback, speaking of him, Hayden Wolf will be the guy kind of pulling the trigger for the Broncos. He's a big dude, stands at 6'5", weighs about 235 pounds. Now tell me this, Kevin, if you grew up in Venice, Florida, right, in the sun, kind of taking it all in, would you go to Western Michigan and play in the snow? Would you do that?
I think if I got the opportunity to play Division I football, I'm going to do that. I think that it also gives you a little bit of a, maybe he never saw snow before. Who knows? Maybe he's a secret skier and no one could do that in Florida. I mean, who knows? But he, you get used to the cold pretty quickly. I remember Raekwon McMillan showed up in winter and it was like 4 degrees and he was like, what is going on? And then by the time the fall hit, he was running around without sleeves on, playing in the freezing cold. So that's just how it happens.
That's how it goes. Well, for Hayden, before getting to Western Michigan, he was the quarterback at Old Dominion. And in 2022, so a few years back, threw for almost 3,000 yards and 18 touchdowns. And then made the jump, transferred to Western Michigan. And he played in just 8 games last year in 2023, making 4 starts, and was decent. Truly, wasn't the best, but had a solid year. Completed about 65.5% of his passes for 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. Also punched it in twice on the ground, so not a huge threat to run. Obviously, the big dude, hard to tackle, but can kind of sling it around a little bit. And the big piece on this Western Michigan offense is going to be running back Jalen Buckley. Now, this is a redshirt sophomore, but he is the reigning MAC freshman of the year. Had an awesome freshman campaign in 2023 where he was played in 11 games. He finished third team all MAC, finished the season with just over 1,000 rushing yards. He's going to be a guy that they really lean on. You look at the discrepancy in plays from last week, tried to really have a balanced attack, and they're going to try to do that again. We saw last week with Akron trying to do some funky things just to move the sticks. If you're Western Michigan, I'm thinking the only way that you're going to try to hang in this ball game is if you can find some ways to get your playmakers the football and move the sticks. And Jalen Buckley is going to be one of those guys coming out of the backfield.
Absolutely, especially with Jacob Gideon and Addison West, on that offensive line, 2 anchors, 2 seniors. They've been playing football. They've been Division I football for 4 years. Mm-hmm. Those guys are pretty dominant up front, and if they can get some movement and get Buckley behind him, I'd look out. That could be downhill pretty quickly, and it chews up a lot of clock.
Absolutely, it gets that clock moving, shortens that game down a lot. All right, so let's say the defense is dominating. Western Michigan's punters on the field all game long, kicking it back to the Ohio State offense. What is the Buckeyes when they're on offense? I talked about kind of my expectations for them when they have the football of starting fast and staying fast. Right, let's get this thing going and let's be consistent throughout the game, whether it's the 1s, the 2s, or the 3s. Let's make sure this looks right. When the Buckeyes are on offense, who are a couple names to kind of keep an eye out for from that Broncos defense?
Yep, Cleveland guy, Garfield Heights guy, Donald Willis, played at Minnesota before transferring in. He's someone to take a look at. He led the team in tackles last week, so that's nothing to balk at. And then Isaiah Green, D lineman, only one with a sack last week. So obviously he did something right against that Wisconsin offensive line that, is usually a stout offensive line throughout. Just consistently year in and year out, they're usually pretty talented. And then, in the defensive back, Balil Cone, he led the team in tackles. I don't know if that means he was giving up a lot of catches and then making tackles after. But
just about to say, Cone was tied with Donald Willis with 10 tackles last week. And we were laughing about this before we hit record. Not always the best stat when you're a cornerback and you're leading the team in tackles, just because the only way you're making the tackle is if your guy's catching the football. So I don't know if it's good or if it's bad that Cone has led the team last week in tackles, but at least he's getting his guy to the ground.
Absolutely. He had a couple pass deflections. He was doing some stuff right. It wasn't like they weren't throwing. It wasn't like they were only throwing at him and he was just giving up every catch. But he, I don't know exactly how many tackles or if they were more in run support or letting catches up. But that's something to look at too. If he's willing to come in and maybe come in and make a tackle, RPOs might be an option this week, as well as play action passes.
Yeah, man. And when Ohio State has the football, again, I'm just going to hammer it home. Make sure this looks clean, right? Let's make it look clean from the start. No MAs, right? So what are some of the things that we talked about, Kevin, during our film session, right? When you get these funky blitz looks, I want to see some, improved communication from the offensive line. Did they get better throughout the week at identifying blitzes and talking it out? Remember a couple of those clips where, we had a blitzer off the edge and maybe it looked like Josh Fryer was missing his block, but it really was, they just didn't communicate it out, right? And so I'd love to see that kind of start from the jump. And then when they do run the football, let's get some movement, right? We saw it in the second half. They were able to start leaning on the Akron Zips last Saturday. But let's see that right from the jump. Let's get this offensive line really starting to build that momentum, build that chemistry to continue to become the line that they want to be. So for Ohio State, got to attack. I'm thinking you're going to want to establish the run game as Chip Kelly's going to want to do. We talked about it last week. He's going to want to run the football, and this is a really good opportunity to do so. Try to get that run total up above the 200-yard mark. And then when the offense does go and drop it back a little bit and throw the football, want to see Will Howard continue to make the right decision, right? Let's continue to make the right decision, grow in your decision-making. Don't force the football to Jeremiah Smith. Not saying he was, but don't force the football anywhere. Let the defense dictate where the ball goes, and let's have a really clean showing on offense.
Absolutely. My person I'm excited to watch this week is Chief Scott. I just think as the season goes on, he's going to hopefully get used more and more and more. I think he's a real talent there at tight end. Came in as a wide receiver, so he's obviously got the hands, and then emerged into a tight end, put on the weight. I remember first day back, I sat down with him and had a nice conversation at the lunch table. First day back after graduating, and it was cool. He's a good kid, really, really good kid, and it's awesome to watch. And I wish nothing but the best for him, and I hope he has a big game. Truthfully, I think it's trending that way, and I hope it keeps going.
And it's a position, Kevin, that it's not lacking, but there's a big hole when Cade Stover leaves, right? And that's a huge opportunity. We saw the impact that a guy like Cade Stover had last year. When your tight end can get after it in the pass game and still block and be a force in the run game, that is a matchup nightmare for defenses, because you can have them in all packages, and then the offense dictates what the defense does in terms of their the personnel that they have on the field. So that's a huge position that's still kind of up for grabs, and we'd love to see G kind of take a step in that right direction. For me, the guy I'm looking out for, surprise, Will Howard. Let's just keep it pushing. Make sure we're getting cleaner. I'm going to be really excited to see the steps he takes going into this week against Western Michigan. So we'll get out on that. I know we all got NFL football to watch tonight. We finally made it. We got a full slate of games this weekend. We got high school, we got college, we got pro. Before we get out, Kevin, who do you like, Chiefs or Ravens, kicking things off this week?
A lot of people are on the Chiefs. I think it's going to be the Ravens. I think that the Ravens have this consistent team coming back, which is helpful. I think the Chiefs are going to have some weapons. I'm excited to watch Xavier Worthy tonight, see if he was worth the fantasy pick I took on him. But yeah, no, I'm excited. It should be a really good game. I mean, Derrick Henry in the purple will be definitely interesting to see. We're
holding your feet to the fire on Saturday. All right. When you're back on the screen on Saturday, we'll see if you're a winner or if you're a loser. But no, excited. Big one for Ohio State this weekend. Doesn't matter the opponent. Always good to have football in the Horseshoe. Again, a reminder, 7:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday night. But kick it with us all day. We're going to have a ton of content over at the site. So it's Buckeyes lost the site there. Check us out on si.com/college/Ohio State. It's a new site for us, so still learning it on my side. But go check us all out there. There's going to be a ton of written content over on the site. But as always, you can find Kevin, myself, and Brennan here on the YouTube channel. Really appreciate you jumping in with us. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about it if you like what you're seeing from us. But really appreciate it. And looking forward to a Week 2 matchup between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Western Michigan Broncos. Saturday night at the Horseshoe, 7:30 p.m.
Absolutely.